Do you have one of these or this on your RV? If your RV was made in the last 5 years or so, regardless of the brand, then chances are it came pre-wired with a solar port just like this one here. It's a great selling point, as then the manufacturer can advertise that it is ready and wired for solar. But how do you actually make use of this feature? Can you buy any solar panel and just plug it in? What will it actually do for you? Is it worthwhile? Well, those are just a few of the questions I'll answer in today's video as I demonstrate the GoPower 130 watt portable suitcase style solar setup. So stay tuned. All right, so you've probably got a solar port similar to this one on the outside of your RV. This is my personal fifth wheel, the Salem Hemisphere 378 FL. And it's mostly considered an entry-level fifth wheel, but it did come pre-wired with this solar port on the outside. Now this one is from Furrion. It's also known as the XLR style connector. But let me show you another example on my Nobo 10.6, which is an overlanding style rig that I rent out. Now this one came with a GoPower branded solar port on the side, which is the SAE standard. So we've got two different styles of solar ports, and there probably are even some others out there, but the good news is most of them are really just two wires behind the ports, and that's basically just a direct run to your battery or the bus bars that connect to your battery. So that means today pretty much they're all the same, more or less, and there's some exceptions out there, of course, but for the most part they're all the same from a functional standpoint. All right, so let me cover the first question. Why would you want to get a solar panel and plug it into your RV? What does it actually do for you? Well, I bought this mainly for the Nobo 10.6 to facilitate off-the-grid camping. You know, endless camping, the ability to recharge without a generator. And that's perfect for some national parks where maybe you can't use a generator all the time, or if you're interested in boondocking somewhere off the grid and you want to have endless power. And it also will work on my fifth wheel, but you know, my fifth wheel is not really set up for boondocking off the grid for extended amounts of time. So 130 watts of solar charging isn't going to do a whole lot in the case of my fifth wheel. And that's because there's a whole lot more appliances and devices running on the 12-volt system here in the fifth wheel compared to the Nobo 10.6. I mean, even if I added more batteries to the battery bank on the fifth wheel, it's still only going to recharge at a maximum of 130 watts through the solar, and that's under ideal solar conditions with the sun, you know, bright and shining outside. So really, the solar panel then becomes the bottleneck to recharge a larger rig like this fifth wheel. But for something smaller with fewer devices running on the 12-volt system, it's perfect for something like this Nobo 10.6. Now, before you get a solar panel, just consider what your goal is. I mean, if your goal is just to go off the grid, you might actually be better served by a small, you know, 2000 watt inverter generator similar to this Cat INV 2000. That might be your first step, and then perhaps upgrading to a lithium battery on your RV, and then probably solar makes sense at that point. Second question, why did I choose the GoPower 130 watt portable panel? Well, again, this is primarily something I bought for the Nobo 10.6, and on the roof there is limited space to put solar panels, not much real estate up there. So that was kind of the primary reason. But the other reason is when you've got a portable solar panel, you can move it to the optimal position to absorb the sun's energy. When I need it, I can bring it along with me. Otherwise, if I don't need the solar power, I can leave it safely out of the elements in the suitcase here. Now, let me give you some close-up views of this particular kit so you can get a better idea of the features. So it does come with this outer suitcase, this protective suitcase, and it's kind of a, I think, a nylon type material. It's semi-rigid, but still a little bit soft there to protect the solar panel. And then it's got two zippers on the top, so one for this side, and then it stops there, and then one for the other side. And I like how they've left a cutout here for the handle, and this handle is actually mounted to the solar panels themselves, as opposed to a handle that's on the bag, and then, you know, maybe the weight of the solar panels wants to rip the handle off from the bag. So I like the way they left this cutout here to make it easy. But let me go ahead and show you opening it up, what you've got inside. So again, two zippers on either side. You just go down on the sides like that, and then that outer suitcase is going to unfold for you. So you can see it's called a suitcase style solar panel because it hinges just like a suitcase. And then you just grab your handle and pull it out of the outer suitcase there. And then you can see on the solar panels itself, it has two latches, one on this side and one on that side, and then it just unfolds. So what you're going to want to do is set it upright like this and then unfold it. And you can see here on the back side, it's got some wing nuts and 2 little arms. You just tighten up those wing nuts on both sides, same over here. And then we're gonna let the solar panel rest on those legs. So pretty simple to set up. And let me give you some close-up views of the back so you can get an idea of the construction. So it's all made out of aluminum there, and then you can see each solar panel is connected to the solar charge controller, which is actually included with this kit, and it is mounted to the frame of the solar panel. It just kind of rotates and kind of hinges a little bit there. Now, you might be wondering, why do you need a solar charge controller in the first place, right? Why can't you just plug a solar panel directly into your rig? Well, you want to kind of regulate or condition the solar energy that you're absorbing through the solar powers so that it goes to your battery in a meaningful way. And what I mean by that is, if you just plug a solar panel directly into the battery on your RV, depending on how much energy is being absorbed by the sun, it may not know how to absorb that power. Plus, you could damage your battery by overcharging it. And so a solar charge controller ensures that the power, the energy that you're absorbing through the sun, is then being passed on to your battery in the proper way. The GP-PSK 130 watt solar kit does come with a variety of cables and adapters, so let me show you what those look like. First up, you get a long umbilical cord, and that's what runs between your solar charge controller and then on your RV. And I would say that's probably about 10 to 12 feet long. And then right here, we've got our first adapter. This one is the SAE adapter, and this is the official GoPower standard that they use. And you can see on the opposite end here, it's just got a standard battery connector with the positive and negative leads. And then you also get the XLR style connector, and this is the one that Furrion uses on their pre-wired solar ports. Then you also get one with alligator clamps. If you wanted to just clamp directly to your battery or some leads, you could use that one. And then the last one they give you has little eyes on it where you could actually go onto your battery terminals and hardwire this directly by taking your wing nuts off the battery terminals and putting these there as well. But you'll notice all the cables are going to have these gray standard battery adapters on the opposite ends, so they are all interchangeable. And now I'll do a live demonstration so you can see how everything connects together. So right now I've got the umbilical cord plugged into the solar controller right there, and then that goes to my SAE adapter, because this is the Nobo 10.6 that has the GoPower solar port on the outside. And it's super easy. You just plug it straight in. You can see there's only one way for that plug to fit, so you can't reverse it. And you just plug that straight in, and then you can see I've got a solid connection running between the solar panel and the solar charge controller and then the RV there. And once everything's connected, then it should light up right away here on the display on the solar charge controller. If it doesn't, it just means that something is broken between here and your battery, and so you just want to double check your wiring and make sure it goes all the way through. Once it does light up, the first thing you're going to do for the first use is go ahead and set what type of battery you have so that the solar charge controller knows how to pass along that power. So on this particular model, this is the 10 amp PWM solar controller from GoPower that it comes with, and it doesn't actually have a setting for lithium batteries. This is what I have on the Nobo 10.6. I've got a 100 amp hour Battle-Born lithium battery, but the manufacturer says that the AGM setting is equivalent to the lithium setting. It's going to, in other words, send the power in the same way that the lithium battery interprets it as meaningful. And so for a lithium battery, you're going to set it to AGM. This does also support your standard, lead acid batteries as well. So go ahead and set that first, and once you set it, you're good to go. You never have to change that setting again. And you can see they've designed this enclosure with the solar controller kind of on a hinge and a pivot mount where it rotates, so you can kind of move this around as you need to depending on the angle of the panels. But let me just kind of walk you through what you're going to get out of this display right here. And we're going to use this B button to scroll through the different options there. So right now we're showing how many amps are coming from the sun into the battery. So 1 amps, or you could say a little over 12 watts. And if we hit the B button, then you can see it's trying to tell us our battery capacity right now, how fully charged it is. And then you can also see in amp hours how much energy is being taken from the sun and sending it back into the battery. And then it's going to give us our voltage off the battery itself. Now, I found personally that for a lithium battery, for my Battle-Born battery, the capacity and the voltage isn't quite dead on 100%. And I think that's just because it's really thinking it's an AGM battery. But for practical purposes, as far as it sending energy from the sun to the battery, the manufacturers assured me that AGM is the right setting and that it's, delivering the maximum capacity to the battery on that setting. Now you can see today is not the best day for solar energy. The sun is there, but it is hiding behind the clouds and they are pretty thick. But think about this, just like you can get sunburned on a day that's overcast, well, the solar panels still absorb a little bit of energy even when it's completely cloudy outside. Now you can see right now I am absorbing 0.8 amps, so that's only about 6-7 watts. Pretty pathetic considering this is a 130 watt rated solar panel between the two, but at least you are getting something. Now let me just stop and interject a helpful tip. If you have the Victron BMV712 battery monitor installed on your RV, then you can actually sort of remotely monitor what this solar panel is doing through the app on your phone through Bluetooth. And if you don't have the BMV712 or you're not sure what that is, I will put a card up above and a link in the description below where I demo that. But check this out. This is the BMV712 app and it's connected to the Nobo right now. So you can see that it's showing 10 watts approximately of power going into the battery. So not -10, but +10, now 9 watts. And so that kind of gives you an idea of what the solar panel is doing to your battery. Now, if you have everything turned off, all your lights, your inverter, there's no load on your battery whatsoever, then that's going to be a pretty accurate reading as far as what energy is going through the solar panel into your battery. And if you've got lights on or a load on your battery, then basically that's going to take away from whatever is running on the battery at present, and that reading's not going to be 100% accurate. But kind of interesting to think that you can, monitor everything through the Victron BMV712 through the battery app. It's kind of a neat feature just to see it on a readout right here in your hand. And of course, you can also get that same information on the battery monitor itself, the display inside your rig. If you scroll through, you can see I'm getting 12 watts right now, +12 watts through that solar panel because I've got everything else on the rig turned off. Now, there might be a small ambient load on the rig even when everything's powered off, so I might be getting a little more than 11 watts right now, but that's a pretty good estimate. All right, let me talk about likes and dislikes. So first up, likes. I love how they give you everything with this kit that you need to get started to charge your rig through solar. I love that they give you all the different adapters. They could have easily skimped and only given you the SAE connector that their system uses typically, but they went ahead and gave you the XLR style, even the alligator clamps, and the direct wire connection there with the terminals. So I love that they give you everything you need, and then you got that nice suitcase to protect it. So that's definitely a plus. I also like that the solar panel itself is surrounded in aluminum, and that's pretty typical for solar panels since they're exposed to the elements, but they made everything out of aluminum there, even the brackets there, the legs that support it. So I like that very much. I also like that Go Power has really good support. And let me show you real quick. This is the cable, the adapter, the SAE connector that actually came with the rig. And you can see here there was a kind of a manufacturing defect where when this was made and this red positive lead was crimped into this connector, this terminal here, it must not have been done properly. And so when I got it, it was loose. And so I tried seeing if I could fix it, but it's hydraulically crimped in a factory, so there was just no hope. And so it eventually just came out, and I reached out to Go Power, and I think within a day, I sent them a picture and they had a replacement part on the way to me. And I think probably a week later, I got it. So I will say Go Power is very responsive when it comes to warranty and support issues. I also had inside this Nobo 10.6, I've got the Go Power inverter, and it has a remote switch you can see there, that yellow button. And about 6 months maybe after I got that switch installed, the button started cracking. And same thing, I just sent a picture to Go Power, and again, they were really quick to replace that switch and send me a new one. So it's really nice to work with a manufacturer that stands behind their products. And by the way, I am not affiliated with Go Power. I did have to buy this solar kit and pay the full price just like everybody else, and I did not tell them every time I reached out to their support team that I was going to review their products. I just was an ordinary customer. So it's really nice to see how quick they are and responsive to fix issues like that. Now for the dislikes. dislikes. Let me tell you my first dislike here on the solar charge controller. As you're scrolling through the different displays here, you've got the amps, of course, the state of charge on your battery, the amp hours coming from the solar panel, and then your voltage. But you'll notice there's no watts readout. Now, I know what you're thinking. Technically, you can just take that 1.2 amps and multiply it by 12, and that's going to give you watts, right? But for some reason, I don't know if it's just me, but I'm more used to thinking in terms of watts when it comes to power, and I am not an electrical engineer or anything like that. It's just, I just think more in terms of watts instead of amps. I guess it's kind of like, you know, if you're used to the standard US measurement system and then going to metric, it's just a little harder. You have to kind of think about it for a second. So like I said, you can calculate the watts easily, just multiply by 12, but I wish they just had another screen showing the watts there. Now, my other dislike here is I wish they would update their controller to show a lithium battery, a true lithium battery setting here. And what I've noticed here is the state of charge and then also the voltage is slightly off, and I think that's because AGM batteries have a different floating voltage or a different fully charged state on the voltage there compared to lithium batteries, and so naturally this is going to be reading in slightly different settings since it thinks I'm plugged into an AGM battery. Now again, the manufacturers assure to me that it is optimized on that AGM setting for lithium batteries as far as charging, but I just wish they would update maybe a newer version where it had a lithium setting, and then I think probably the state of charge here and then also the voltage would probably be more accurate. It's not a big issue though, because if you do have the Victron BMV712 on your rig, which most people that have this probably do, then you can get those accurate numbers off the BMV712. Another minor dislike is the length of the umbilical cord that they supply with the unit, and I think it's about 10 to 12 feet long. So that has to be connected between your RV and the solar charge controller every time that you want to use it. And I found practically a lot of times I want to go a little bit further, maybe 15, 20 feet to get in the optimal position for the panels to, you know, absorb the sun properly. And so then I'm limited by that 10 to 12 feet on that umbilical cord. Now, certainly you could go out and buy an extension to plug in, especially since it's got those standard, you know, gray battery, quick connect, disconnect terminals there. But I just wish that they given you maybe just a few more feet, maybe 15 to 20 feet, and that would solve that problem for most people. One last dislike, and this one might seem like I'm being kind of picky, but the buttons here on the solar charge controller. So you can see that there's little indentations where those buttons are, and it's basically all one piece here on the face of the controller. And I think they did that probably to make it, you know, water resistant or somewhat waterproof, since it's going to be outside typically, so that water doesn't have a way to get in through the buttons. But the action, the travel on the buttons took me a little bit to get used to. So when I first got it, I thought these were like kind of an old school microwave, you know, where you push the microwave button and you kind of, you know, you press pretty firmly and you get a beep or some kind of feedback, but I was getting nothing. And then I realized it's really just like a touch screen on a phone where you have a very light tap, you know, just a little more pressure maybe than you'd put on your phone. And you do hear a very soft click that they designed to give you a little bit of feedback, but it just feels kind of mushy, and I just wish there was a little bit more travel, a little bit more feedback on those buttons there. All right, last question. Is the GoPower 130 watt solar kit worthwhile? Would I buy it all over again? Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I bought this primarily for the Nobo 10.6, which I rent out, and so I thought it would be a nice add-on for renters to kind of extend their stay, you know, when they're off the grid. And over the last year, I've had plus or minus about 40 renters or so, and out of those 40 renters, I think only about half a dozen have actually opted to use this add-on and pay for it. And so I bought it on Amazon. It was a warehouse deal, so it was slightly discounted, maybe $100 off or so. But, you know, I've barely broken even on the cost of the solar panel in terms of how much it's actually gotten used over the last year. And I think one of the primary reasons is I also added a 100 amp hour lithium battery on my rig, which for most people, most renters, that's going to be 2 to 5 days of use without ever having to recharge, depending on what you're running. And so I think for most people, they just see, well, hey, I can already get 2 to 5 days off the grid. Do I really need solar at that point? And so that's probably one reason that it's not as popular. You know, most of my rentals are going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 days. Every once in a while, there's a long-term, you know, 20, 30-day rental, but definitely not as common. You also need a clear path to the sun from your RV to the solar panels here. And, you know, remember, you only have about 10 to 12 feet, maybe about 15 by the time you add on some adapters between the solar panels and your RV. And so if you're thinking, you know, typical campsite, and a lot of them are wooded, So it is kind of hard to then get these solar panels into an area where you've got sunlight and can make use of solar energy. So purely from a rental profitability standpoint, you know, it's probably not worth it to have solar panels as an add-on. But if I was personally overlanding, you know, 20, 30 days at a time, or maybe I was staying in a lot of national parks where perhaps generators are not allowed or they're restricted when you can use them, then I think the solar option makes a whole lot of sense. And it's super compact, especially when you get a kit like that that's in a suitcase style where you can take it when you need it or leave it behind when you don't. But for me personally, based on my experiences with the manufacturer Go Power and just how positive everything's been, if I was looking to add a portable suitcase style solar kit to an RV, this would definitely be my go-to solar kit to add on there. Now, if you're watching this and you've tried a different solar kit from another manufacturer, definitely let us know in the comments below. I think that'd be really helpful to the community. Obviously, there's other kits out there and some of them probably are more affordable, so definitely let us know below. And in case you missed it earlier in the video, this Nobo 10.6 did come with the Go Power solar port on the outside, but it's really just a standard SAE port. And so you can pretty much connect any brand solar panel and solar controller. It doesn't necessarily have to be the Go Power brand, since that is a standard SAE connector. Now, sometimes you might have to switch the polarity because different brands might reverse the positive and negative cables that feed into that solar port. But generally speaking, you can do any solar panel and any solar controller that's compatible, you know, something in the 10 to 12 amp range on this particular style port. So in summary, I think the Go Power 130 watt portable solar kit is a great choice if you're looking for off-the-grid solar charging. Just remember, you do need a lot of sunlight to really make use of it. So you might want to consider an inverter generator first, maybe something in the 2000 watt range, and then upgrade your battery to a lithium battery perhaps. And then I think that's where solar really makes sense, especially if you're going to be, you know, 3, 4, 5+ days off the grid and you really can't use a generator for some particular reason. Well, that's it for our video today. I hope you found it helpful. If you are interested in purchasing the Go Power 130 watt solar kit, I will include affiliate links in the description below to support the channel. But as always, thanks for watching, and thanks especially for your feedback and comments below. They're incredibly helpful to the community.